Hello everyone, this is Congrats here. Welcome back to the channel, guys. So today I've got myself a prediction video. 2025 MLB season officially began. Of course, I know I'm late to this party, and I know a lot of people have already done this, but I'm gonna be posting this anyway. So I'm gonna be giving you guys my season predictions as to how I think the divisions are gonna go, who makes the playoffs, basically for both the American League and the National League. I'll start with the American League first, and that's what I'm going to do in this video, and I'll make a second video for the National League. So starting off, let's go with the AL Central first. So the AL Central, we very well could see at least a little bit of movement here, and I genuinely think that one team may surprise a lot of people, and and last year they did very well, and I think that they're going to take a big step this year. So first off, at the bottom of this division, I have the Chicago White Sox. I'm pretty sure most people have the White Sox finishing it last in the Central. I mean, this is a team that's still very much in a rebuild. They sold even more guys that were a part of that team last year that historically was bad. And I'm not expecting much to really happen with these guys. Maybe they're not going to be as bad offensively or whatnot, but I'm not expecting them to win a lot of games. Expect probably a 100 loss season once again. And, once again, not doing much winning at all this year. Number four, we've got the Tigers. I went with Detroit because it's kind of tough to figure out the remaining four teams because they all kind of made some sort of adjustments in the offseason. The Tigers did pick up some guys in free agency, like um, Gleyber Torres and Jack Flaherty, I think were their biggest additions. So, that's pretty good, but still, they are relying on some internal improvement. And the only reason why they went on such a good run last year was because they caught fire right at the end of the season. A lot of people are expecting that if that's going to happen again, a lot of stuff would have to go right for them. And I just don't see that really happening. It is a wide open American League, but I just don't see the Tigers rekindling that same kind of magic. And I just don't see them getting anywhere above, I'd say third. I just have them fourth because I couldn't really figure out if they're third or fourth right now. Number three, I've got the Twins. Minnesota really had a quiet offseason. They didn't do much, and they still have pretty much the exact same core with Carlos Correa, Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis, and whatnot. They lost maybe a couple of smaller players in free agency, and they didn't do really much to reinforce themselves outside of maybe getting some bullpen support. But other than that, I'm kind of expecting the same thing as we saw last year. Unfortunately, they're already dealing with some injury problems. I think I heard that Royce Lewis is already dealing with some hamstring issues from spring training, and he's already kind of missing a part of the lineup. And it's not looking great for Minnesota, especially because right now they're in a bit of a state of flux with ownership, as the Polad family is trying to sell the team right now, and they're notorious for not really spending much. And I think everyone kind of understands what the situation is. But I just don't see the Twins being that great offensively this year, and they might take a step back on the pitching side of things. I just don't see them really getting anything higher than third here. I'm not even sure if they can even crack a wild card spot, let's be honest. Number two, I've got Cleveland. I really do think that the Guardians are still a very good team. I do think that they took a step back for what they did in the offseason, trading like Andres Jimenez and Josh Naylor for a lineup that is really limited when it comes to offensive power, and it's mostly a contact team with some good defense. So the fact that they got rid of Naylor, who pretty much was one of the most productive players at the plate, and Jimenez, who was a three-time Gold Glove, Platinum Glove winner with Cleveland, who was underperforming offensively. I'll give him that. But then again, they basically didn't get much to reinforce their roster. I think they did pick up Nolan Jones from the Rockies, though, a few days before the season started, and that's not bad of a reinforcement there, assuming that he can rekindle the magic he had a couple years ago. But for Cleveland, I just don't see them winning the division. Eventually, their pitching is probably going to come back down a little bit to earth, and this roster is still not one that's going to be kind of jumping at you offensively. They're probably going to rely on a lot of defense, and they're going to rely on basically chaining hits together at the plate in order to get some runs in. And I just don't think it's going to be enough for them to win the division. And with that being said, I got the Kansas City Royals finishing number one. Kansas City looks like a team that I think that they could be further on the rise this year. Some people are already anticipating Bobby Witt Jr. to be a potential MVP candidate in the preseason predictions. You still have younger guys in there like Vinny Pasquantino. They did trade away Brady Singer in the offseason to at least reinforce some of their guys, getting Jonathan India from Cincinnati, who can at least fill in at second base. You're still looking at a roster that's still relatively young and has a lot of room to grow. And honestly, they could very well take a much bigger step this year. And they got some pretty good playoff experience last postseason, so that's going to put them in the right direction. And I really do think that this is probably their year to win the Central. All right, moving on. So now we have the AL West. This division definitely is seeing some major turnover, at least with compared to last season, in my opinion. So to start at number 5, I've got the LA Angels. I'm pretty sure most people are expecting the Angels to probably bottom out this year. They did make some reinforcements, and they are getting back Mike Trout fully healthy, but I just don't see this team as being any closer to the middle of this division even because it's like they should be going into a rebuild. They really don't have any prospects. The guys that they got as veterans are kind of fringe players. Like, I don't know, we're talking Travis d'Arnaud, Jorge Soler, Yusei Kikuchi, like they're not really big name guys. Like maybe they're good for the middle or like as filling in some small holes, but not as a full core. So I don't really know what they're doing. They're probably gonna get close to 90 to 100 losses this year, and that's probably all we're going to see from them. Number 4, I've got the Mariners. This is might be a hot take, but I really do think Seattle's pitching is going to fall off this year. They got one of the better rotations in baseball, but there's only so much they can do, and they really didn't do much to help rebuild their offense. They had a terrible offensive team last season. I think all they did was bring back Jorge Polanco, who also was not looking good in a Mariners uniform last year. And I think Donovan Solano, could be wrong, but and not to mention they also lost most of the guys they picked up at the deadline, like Justin Turner, Jimmy Garcia, for example. They just really didn't do anything to help fix up their offense. So I really do think their offense is going to take a big hit this year, and their pitching eventually is going to give out with the heavy workload. I'm not anticipating an injury or anything, but like if one of those guys get down with injuries, I'm not sure if Seattle really has the bullpen depth to last with that significant workload now being put on them. So I really do think that they might just fall off this year just a little bit, but we'll see. Number 3, I've got Oakland. Well, Oakland. It's just the Athletics now. The branding has kind of changed. Starting the first year in West Sacramento, now playing out of a minor league ballpark before moving to Las Vegas. The A's are a team that I think are on the rise this year. Some people are questioning that they could very well sneak into the playoffs as like a 500 team. I mean, last year they finished the season 32 and 32 in their last like 70 games, so they weren't doing too bad. Their young guys are continuing to improve and they're starting to lock up players. And they got some guys in free agency like Jose Leclerc, Luis Severino, getting now the richest contract in franchise history. You're looking at a decent group of veterans that decided to join the A's. And you're still going to probably see some internal improvements from young guys like Zach Geloff and Lawrence Butler, who got a contract, I think. Also, you got Brent Rooker in there, who is coming off of a pretty solid season. I think that this might be a year where they kind of see some significant improvements. I'm not expecting the A's to be a playoff team, but I think that they could very well compete for at least a wild card spot. That's probably the most I'm going to give them, let's be honest, and that's house money. Number 2, I've got Houston. I went with the Astros because they lost a lot. Losing Bregman in free agency, trading Kyle Tucker to the Cubs is definitely a big loss. Their outfield kind of looks like a mess, and at least from what I've heard, that I think Altuve is now playing in the outfield as a guy who should be playing second base. It's not really good. This is an aging roster as well. They're also facing some contract issues and some guys who are going to be free agents at the end of the season. They don't really have much of a prospect pool to help reinforce in case they deal with injuries. And they got back like some guys who could fit in, like Isaac Paredes, for example, but they also lost a number of guys in free agency who they picked up at the last trade deadline. So I'm not really sure if Houston can win the division this year, and I really do think that they might still be in that race, but eventually they're going to fall off, and I think they'll just finish second. And finishing number 1, I've got the Texas Rangers. I think Texas had a sneakily good offseason, and I think a lot of people are mentioning that. They picked up a lot of guys who very well can fill in the holes of their roster that they had last year for a group that's still very good offensively. It's just that they had a combination of injuries and just some bad luck. Getting guys like Jock Peterson, for example, really helps to fill in those holes. Jake Berger, trading for him was actually very surprising, and that's pretty good. If they get a bounce back year from Josh Young and Adolis Garcia, and if Corey Seager can have has anywhere close to an MVP caliber season, Texas will very well be a playoff threat again, and most likely will probably win the division if that is the case. If Jacob deGrom is healthy, then that's going to be a big improvement for their starting rotation and makes them even more deep as a pitching staff, and that's a lot of weapons to carry. Okay, last but not least, we've got the AL East, probably the toughest division to predict. But in my opinion, I think this is one where it's really the top two that I think are going to be kind of a toss up here, but let's just go through it. So at the bottom, I've got the Blue Jays. I really do think Toronto is probably just going to bottom out again this year. I really don't have much faith in these guys. I think all they really did was trade for more defense and try to supplement their power struggle by overpaying one guy in free agency because they once again failed to land any heavy free agent. And I'm not trying to knock on Anthony Santander and even Andres Jimenez, for example, who they traded for from Cleveland, but this is a Blue Jays team that is still very much defense first, and I just don't really have a lot of faith that their offense is going to improve in any shape or form. And not to mention, this is also a year where they're at risk of maybe losing Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette to free agency. They are dealing with maybe some questions within the rotation. They picked up Max Scherzer, who could be someone, but I'm not really sure as to how effective he's going to be at the age of 40. And they don't really have much pitching depth. So if they lose a guy in the starting rotation, that's going to be a heavy workload on a bullpen that at best is probably going to be average, but it's going to be below average most likely. Yeah, I think the Blue Jays are probably the weakest link in the AL East. Sitting at number four, I've got the Rays. The only reason why I put Tampa Bay at fourth is because they do have some young guys that they can rely on. They did make some reinforcements in free agency, getting guys like Danny Jansen and Eloy Jimenez who couldn't make it out of spring training, let's be honest. And, it's not too bad. And also, they're playing out of a minor league ballpark because Tropicana Field got destroyed by a hurricane, and that probably will give them at least some kind of advantage and maybe win some more games. And they're still going to get the best out of their pitching, so we'll have to see. I don't see the Rays as being near a playoff team again this year. Probably it's just going to be one of those years where they're going to be mediocre at best, and will probably sell at the deadline. At number three, I've got the Red Sox. Might be a hot take, I'm not sure, but I know Boston made a lot of adjustments in the offseason, getting a lot of big players. Bregman, for example. They have a lot of prospects too, I should have mentioned, like Roman Anthony, I've heard about, and what was that guy, Christian Campbell, I think that his name is. But they picked up a lot of guys that can help reinforce the roster. There is a bit of a question mark between Bregman and Devers as to who's going to play third base and who's DHing. I think right now they have Devers is going to be probably the full-time DH, but I'm not entirely sure. And also trading for Garrett Crochet from the White Sox is a really big boost to that starting rotation. They got some more guys to the bullpen. And, this looks like a roster that could really do some damage. If things go well and if the guys are healthy and everything, this could very well be a team that could maybe challenge for the division. But I just think the two teams ahead of them are just a little bit better. Okay, so next up I got the Yankees. The reason why I have the Yankees at number two and not number one here is because I'm kind of questioning their reinforcements that they got in the offseason. I know that they traded for Cody Bellinger, they got Paul Goldschmidt, which, those aren't bad, but those are older guys. And at the same time, Bellinger has been very up and down since his MVP seasons. And Goldschmidt looks like he's been on the decline now for at least a few seasons. At the same time, they did lose Juan Soto in free agency, which is a big hole that they have to now take care of. And he provided a lot of protection for Aaron Judge, who took a lot of flack in the postseason for not doing enough for the Yanks. Losing Garrett Cole to Tommy John is going to be a big hit on the starting rotation. We're going to have to see how they adjust to that. I'm not sure as to how things are going to go for the Yankees. And the reason why I have them at number two is really in relation to number one, and that's the Orioles. I just think Baltimore, this is probably another year where they might just win the division as well. And the reason why I have them is because if you look at the Yankees and Orioles' regular season schedules, these guys are playing each other 7 times in their last 12 games, which is kind of a lot for division rivalry. For some reason, the AL East are like a lot of them are happening towards the end of the season. And I really do think these 7 games are going to be like what's deciding who's going to win this division right now. I do think that the Yanks and Orioles are very much close to each other when it comes to overall power. I do like Baltimore better just because they've got younger talent. They got guys who are a lot more effective. They didn't do too much in the offseason, and they did lose some notable guys like Corbin Burns, for example. They didn't do much to reinforce outside of maybe getting Tyler O'Neill for the outfield and some smaller arms for the bullpen. And they are getting some reinforcements like getting back Felix Bautista from injury. So I just think that really these last couple games of the regular season between these two teams is really what's going to decide the AL East. But yeah, that's who I've got. So we know who our division winners are. I'm gonna say out of the three teams that make the wild card, I'm gonna have the Yankees. I'll have Cleveland, the Guardians, and I would say Houston from the AL West. So that's all I got, guys. I'm gonna make a second video on the National League predictions. And let me know what you guys think. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content if you like this, and I'll see you all in the next one.